call the meeting to order. If you're a board member, please come on to the stage and take your seat. Carrie?
You sit on the floor up here, or?
Are there, we can get a chair. Can someone lift a chair up? Yeah. Or you can sit there.
Well, you should feel comfortable on stage. Grab a chair and come on up.
So,
I mean, I don't know. What do you want?
well,
In the front there too.
pick her two or whatever. So welcome to this special meeting of the, can you hear? Yeah, welcome to the special board meeting. We are, hopefully you have your agenda here. And if you're a board member, hopefully you have read the public comment, which is linked into the agenda. We'll just start with confirmation of board member attendance and voting. So I don't have the voting here. There's the voting sheet in front of me. So I'll call off names and you can say if you're voting or not. Gail Marshall.
Not voting.
Teresa King.
Not voting.
Brian Hinkle.
Voting.
Jamie Whitehead.
Voting.
Kathy Almke.
Voting.
Dwayne Bolt.
Voting.
Robin Sue Tapley is absent. Marie Yarrow.
Voting.
Lily Simmons.
Voting.
Patrick Skate.
Voting.
John Bench.
Voting.
Susan Allen is absent. John Eisenhower.
Yes, I'm voting.
Okay. Bo Lizey.
Not voting.
Jim Sawyer.
Voting.
I am not voting. Jessica Bass.
Not voting.
Carrie Hayes.
Voting.
Roger St. Amand.
Voting.
Eliza Bishop.
Voting.
Jennifer Manila.
Voting.
Gary Burr is absent. Tom Reed is absent. Yes. Darcy Throckmorton. Okay. Aaron Brown. Voting. Tammy Tripler is voting. Okay, and I don't think we have anyone from the other islands. So we will begin with with our customary period. Can you hear me? Of public comment, and if we will have an additional period of public comment at the end of the meeting if there are people here who wish to public comment. So as usual, our public comment is limited to 30 minutes, and it is 3 minutes per person. And we do want to get to our decision-making period of the point in this meeting where we will, have an opportunity to discuss as a board and make a decision. So I invite everyone to keep their comments to 3 minutes and to be, civil and respectful to people who, I know feelings on this issue run very high and people have really strong opinions. So please, respect the feelings and of your neighbors as they get up to speak. I also want to let people know that the way that public comment works is that we hear your comment, but we don't respond. If there's something that someone says that requires some sort of urgent response, the superintendent or I will respond in writing to you, in the coming days, if there were something that were, required some kind of response. And then when we get to the board meeting part, of course, it's a public meeting with the public. We are meeting in public and the public may observe, but it is not a public meeting with public participation. So at that point, we aren't taking then public comment until we have our second period of public comment at the end of the meeting. The other point to note is, I just read through the voting list, is that because we're an AOS, not all members of each local board vote at every meeting. It's on a rotation. So if you're watching and you wonder why certain people are not voting, it's because of there are 5 members of each local board, and between 3 and 4 or 1 for each outer island vote at each meeting. So that is why that is the case that's happening. So we will begin with public comment, and if you raise your hand, I'll just call on you and you can come up to the microphone, and Brian will keep time and wave his hand when you're getting close to your 3 minute time limit, and I'll try to get to as many people as possible. Okay. Go ahead.
dear members of the AOS 91 School Board. My name is Abby Tadna, and I'm the parent of 3 children, the older 2 of whom attend Connors Elementary School. I've chosen to speak here tonight about some major logical inconsistencies that I've observed with the arguments supporting the repeal of the mask mandate. The most glaring fallacy is the personal choice line that is typically used when discussing this issue. The simple fact is that the choice to go maskless can have a significant negative effect on others. Another commenter made the great point that it is analogous to smoking. Those who do not want to be exposed to cigarette smoke will not make the choice to smoke. But if they are going to be in close physical proximity to people who choose to smoke, the choice given them to be smoke-free has actually been taken away. Yes, one-way masking does some good, just as not putting a cigarette to your lips is better than the alternative. But scientific studies, as well as basic common sense, say that masking works best when both parties participate. Another major issue I see is about vaccination. We are frequently told that vaccination is our best tool to fight COVID, and that we are urged to vaccinate all members of our family. However, children under 5 have 0 access to COVID-19 vaccines in this country, and there are many students and staff in the schools who have family members who fall in this age group, my family included. As you may know, the COVID vaccine for those under 5 is in the clinical trial stage, with no indication yet about when it will be available for children, though it is hoped for within the next few months. It is important to note that this youngest group of children has been found to be at greater risk for serious adverse health consequences, including hospitalization and death from COVID, than our older children. In order to protect these little ones, we're told to continue masking and to surround the young children with people who are vaccinated. However, while the vaccine is still effective at preventing severe outcomes, the Omicron variant has shown that it is highly capable of infecting those who are fully vaccinated. This is especially true for those who have not yet received a 3rd dose of the vaccine, which would currently include everyone under the age of 12. Thus, I strongly urge you to consider maintaining the mask mandate, especially in the elementary schools, where most students are not yet eligible for the protection that comes from a 3rd dose of the vaccine, and who are most likely to have family members under the age of 5. Having our children participate in in-person learning carries risks of contracting COVID, and we've seen this ourselves over the past year. But I think we're nearly all in agreement that the risks have been worth it. However, I am confident that the mitigation policies that have been in place have helped minimize transmission in schools, and I do not think that these should be dramatically changed until everyone has access to a safe, effective vaccine. And when the day comes to roll back the mandate, I strongly urge school administrators to ensure that students are educated with facts about why we wear masks, and to practice kindness to those who, for whatever reason, are not ready to take off their masks. Out of kindness and respect, individuals should be prepared to put on a mask to interact with someone who chooses to continue wearing their own mask. Staff who wish to continue the practice should be allowed to inform students of their preference that masks be worn in the classroom. It may well be that the person who continues wearing a mask is trying to protect an elderly relative, and who among us would tell them that our right to be mask-free is more important? Thank you very much.
Hi folks, my name is Darren and I'm a Mainer. From Caribou up in the county to Bangor to here on the island of Bar Harbor. I'm a tribal member of the Maliseet First Nation and I live and work here year round. This is my state. I have 2 kids in the school system, 1 down, 1 to go. And I'm here to speak in favor of making masks in the school optional. Now, I'm not going to quote any studies or any research or any data of any kind, because for every study, there's an opposite study. And I promised my wife I would make this presentation pleasant, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to take us on a quick trip to the land of Oz. When this first started, we were all Dorothy. We were all scared. We didn't know what was going on. We needed questions answered. I remember wiping my groceries down with bleach. And we all turned to the wizard. We needed some answers. We needed help. The wizard required us to do a couple tasks to prove our worth. And we all did it for heart, for our families, for our neighbors, for people we love. So we separated ourselves, we distanced ourselves, and put on masks, face shields. We took baths and hand sanitizer. We took shots, multiple shots. Everyone in this room has done at least one of those things, and we did it for heart. Now, as 2 weeks turned into 2 years, some of us started scratching our heads, and a little itch in the brain started kicking in. We saw shoes sticking out from underneath the curtain. We started asking questions, and our opinions changed. Not everyone's did. That's fine. Fast forward to where we are right now today. We're all here at the same position, regardless of how you think we got here, we're all here. Mandates being lifted, restrictions are being dropped. You can't find a flying monkey anywhere, okay? It's time now for the last stage, courage. We all drive on the roads here in Bar Harbor in wintertime. Some of us drive a four-wheel drive truck. Some of us drive with snow tires or studded snow tires. There's a guy in town who drives around on a bicycle, like a tricycle guy. You know what I'm talking about. You've all seen him. It's a personal choice we make for the safety of our family and ourselves. We make that choice. I'm not going to tell anybody that they should drive a different vehicle, and I'm not going to try to force anybody to drive the same vehicle I drive. It is a personal choice the students at these schools need to have for themselves. If you want to wear a mask, feel free. No one is going to degrade you. If you don't want to wear a mask, you've earned that right to make that decision for yourself as well. It's the only way we're going to get back to no place like home. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Bryson, and this is my thing. Why we don't want to wear the mask. They suck, can't breathe, my breath stinks, hurts my ears, it puts germs back into yourself. You don't get to drink much water, can't play sports because of the mask. When my friend comes over, we don't have to wear the mask. And when I go to his house, I don't have to wear it. So only place I have to wear it is in prison, aka school. I don't get in trouble because the teachers care about the mask being up. Question: why do I have to wear the mask if they say one mask should protect you and the person that's wearing the mask? So why do I have to wear the mask? Please remove the mask.
My name is Eliza. Why we don't? My name is Eliza. Why we don't want to wear mask? The mask makes my face sweat. It makes my glasses foggy. Hurts around my ears. Makes my breath stink. Not enough water breaks. Cannot breathe. When I play gym, the mask gets wet, and I don't want to wear them. Please remove the mask.
Hello. Hello. Okay, I'm gonna take this down so you can all hear me. So my name is Christine. Those are my kids, Bryce and Eliza. This is the MDIRSS mission statement: to provide leadership and support to member schools to assure all children a high-quality education, emphasizing essential academic skills, preparing students to be personally and socially responsible citizens. To me, this is not a true mission statement. Over the last few years, the quality of education has gone down. Academic skills have fallen, and students are not learning to be socially and personally responsible. The reasons for this is because all the restrictions that have been placed on the students and the teachers, the masking, the social distancing, and quite frankly, all the bullshit that they've had to endure. Having my kids wear the mask have made them more sick than when they did have COVID. They come home from school with stuffy noses, headaches, sore throats, dog breath, and quite frankly, a look of pure exhaustion from breathing in their own oxygen and fibers all day. How can this be safe for my children, all children, to do this all day long? All masks do is create a look of safety. They are not doing anything other than creating unknown effects to children's health later on in life. Children can go to concerts, restaurants, grocery stores, large gatherings, sporting events, etc. But in our school system, they're still be treated as a walking virus. Schools need to focus on education, social and emotional support of children that they have lost in the years of the last learning fed. not worrying if the mask is up over my child's nose. Schools shouldn't be having five or six different organizations of guidance about guidelines. Have you ever heard of too many cooks in the kitchen? Well, in this case, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. The CDC has enlisted fear into children, parents, and administrators, boards, etc. The rise of suicide and mental health incidents are on the rise in children under 18, but nobody's speaking about that. Life is short and precious, and should be enjoyed to the fullest. No child should ever have to have anxiety about going to school because of wearing a mask. So please tonight, make the right decision and unmask my kids and all kids and make it an option for them. They deserve it after years of wearing it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nate. I have already made my comments known via a letter to the board. But I do have a kid in first grade that kind of missing out on home tonight. But it has been demonstrated that masks do reduce transmission in school. There's only 4 months left in the school year. I see no issues reevaluating in the fall after we have some more information. And I would hate to see end of year programs like the prom, graduation, and all that great stuff be ruined because we got premature and pulled our mask mandate early and spiking cases. So that's what I think. It's back into the fall. But yeah.
There's one, the woman in the white coat.
Can I jump ahead?
Sure, go ahead. No, you're up. Go ahead. Yes.
Hello, my name is Sherry Harkins. My granddaughter, we adopted her. She's 8 years old. And I just want to bring up a point that the masks are more than just painful to the kids' ears. They're more than just barriers to this. There's so much damage that comes from covering your face. Emotional, mental damage is being done to the children. And that is so vitally important. Everyone's worried about you're worried about the COVID. True. We're all worried about COVID. Nobody wants to get sick. Nobody wants to pass on the virus to their grandparent or their neighbor. Nobody wants to cause anyone to be ill. But we cannot trade one for the other. We cannot say it's okay to damage our children and their future and their mental state in order to save other people. That's sacrificing the kids. Everyone in the community has, I can't say been supportive of the mask because not everyone has. But we've done what we had to do. We've done what we were told to do because of science. Because that's what we were told. The science says that these are the steps that we need to take. Now, the science is saying that this is not a step that is needed to take. What was that?
1 minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing is this. My mother passed away September before COVID hit. She died. She died of a lung issue. She died gasping. She died before COVID. Many people did. And many people are going to die after COVID. Okay? It's not going to change that. We just need to help alleviate some of the stress, some of the pain for the kids and follow the science. Okay, thank you.
My name is Tyson Sarling. I have a daughter who attends 5th grade in Connors Emerson School. Nobody, I just want to lay this to rest. Nobody in this room wants our kids to wear masks for the rest of their life. This is a temporary situation amidst a global pandemic, which has killed 1 million Americans and 12,800 kids under the age of 20. Frankly, the US is doing very, very terribly at this. We are actually 3rd for world's population, but we are winning at the most people dead to this virus. India and China are doing a better job at curtailing this virus than the United States. As an American, that actually offends me. We are supposed to be the country of greatness. And here we are losing to a virus because we can't take common sense mitigation techniques and just use them to sustain this for a short period of time while we get this under control. Right now, our county is not in green. Our county is currently elevated risk for for coronavirus transmission. It doesn't make sense to start removing mitigation strategies that worked and have proven to have been working, because we have been at this for 2 years and the schools have actually remained open. So we're doing a good job. Thank you guys very much. We're doing what we're supposed to do. Kids need to be in school. They need to be seeing their teachers and their friends. And we're able to accomplish that because we are using mitigation strategies like masks. There are many kids who are ineligible for vaccines at this time. So it doesn't make sense to start decreasing our levels of protection in a time when we know we have community transmission. And so my request is that I urge you to not consider that we're going to keep masks for the rest of our childhood, our kids' school education, but just as long as we can get this under control. It looks like we could be in green in 3 to 4 weeks at this point. So, and the one last thing I want to mention, everybody keeps saying that the state has gotten rid of its mask mandate. That is not what Dr. Shah has said. The state is now deferring to the CDC, the federal CDC, and the federal CDC says that we should be using masks and vaccines and a layered strategy approach. Thank you very much for your time.
I wanted to say thank you all for having this special meeting tonight. I appreciate that you did this because I think it was important and needed instead of leaving it to the 14th. So thank you very much for that. What I do want to say is that I have 2 children who go to the MBI high school. And what I've taught them their whole lives is that it's their body, their choice. And they haven't had a choice. They chose to get vaccinated. They chose that. I didn't say, hey guys, you're going to get vaccinated. I said, your body, your choice. And they chose it. And they chose it because they wanted some normalcy back in their lives. I understand the concern for the children who can't be vaccinated yet, but I just really hope that you all hear and can truly understand how difficult it is as a parent to raise your children to understand that what happens to them is their choice. They decide. And that's not what's happening in their lives. I feel like if they go to school and their friends are masked and they're not masked, it's okay. Those children have made their own choice. And we as a school, really, what we should be doing for them is supporting them in their decisions instead of pushing our decisions onto them. I also want to say that it's a recommendation. They're recommending this. This isn't, nobody's saying masks have to stay. We're in medium right now in Maine, in Hancock County. Hancock County is at a medium level. What that is saying is that they recommend that masks be optional, people get vaccinated, and you quarantine if you have COVID. That's great. Let's do that. That's all really I just want to say. I just think your body, your choice, man. Like, don't teach the kids different than that.
Hello again, it's Mackenzie McElwain from Southwest Harbor. My kid graduated early this year, so I'll just be brief. I just want to remind you that it's okay to think everybody should wear a mask, but not require that they do so. Thanks.
I appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness so far, and I think we have 10 minutes left
I'm gonna go.
in the 30. But I just want to say before we go, because I know we want to get to our discussion, but we asked early on that everybody, we still have mask policy here in schools, so we can't go any further unless everybody has a mask on their face. And I know this, that some people have put them on earlier. I would appreciate it if you make sure that your masks are on before we go further. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, well, I wrote a letter to the school board the other night, and I figured I'd share it out loud. It says, rarely during work do I have a computer in front of me, or do I have the time to express my thoughts in writing. I'm usually out of my comfort zone, contributing to our community in my own way. As everyone that will read this message, we all have that in common. It's my understanding that a majority of letters you've received are from the people that don't have to leave that comfort zone, nor an internet connection. Many of these professionals were told early in the pandemic that they could stay home and still earn a living. By that fact, there will be a large demographic of professionals that have greatly benefited from all these happenings. Better pay, more employee rights, more freedom within a schedule. These privileges are not all here for the teachers and for the superintendents, for that matter. To say these well-written professionals who wish to perpetuate this, are not on your side, the teacher's side. Getting things back, and I say that, and I guess I have a little extra time, and I say that a lot of professionals, I would think, that work right here, and I'm going to point, and excuse me for that, but I don't know if everybody here works in this school and has to be masked all day. Could I have a show of hands? Who gets the comfort in their own home to drop the mask out of this group of people? Is that appropriate for me to ask? Why? Yeah, for work. Who's making these decisions here that gets the comfort of their own home?
Is the question who has the ability to work from home?
Yes. On the school board. That's my question. It's one question. It's not a back and forth. It's one question. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, that's fine then. I just wanted to ask that question. Anyway. So. How many minutes do I have? 2? 17 seconds. Oh, really? Well, anyway. I guess I won't have time to finish. Thank you. But think about that. I know you guys read what I wrote. And it wasn't a back and forth. I think I could get another support for that. It was one point.
Go ahead. The microphone is actually at my height, so thank you to the kids for doing that for me. My name is Melissa, and I am the school nurse at Connors Emerson School. And I just really want to say that Wanda and myself are here to represent the nurses tonight. We have really seen what masking, hand washing, distancing has done to help our schools to stay open. I think we're really close, guys, and anybody that knows me, my daughter would say I am nauseatingly optimistic. So I think that's nice from a teenage girl. But I feel like we're just not there. We are still seeing lots of illness, not just COVID, from the winter. we're inside because of cold weather many days, and we can't get the kids outside to spread out and move about. So I just really, I'm asking, I'm almost begging you, please give us a little more time. And I'm not saying another year, because I don't think we need that. I really feel that we can get there maybe by April. We've got to get to the point where we can open windows, where we can go outside and be free and have class outside if we want to. We can't be, I just don't think we're there yet. I work for a school, this is my school. We had about 150 cases associated with my school so far this year, and we've stayed open all but 2 days. 2 days. I've seen where folks come in and they are sick and they've been around friends, but these mitigation strategies have worked. Let's not give up on them just yet, please, 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 please. I think that's all I really wanted to say. So thank you for your time.
We have time for one more.
I'd like to go back up.
You've already been, so.
Can I ask you one
No,
question, Mr.
No,
Z?
you can't.
One?
Next person? No, one more person. Go ahead.
I'm so disappointed.
What's your question? What's your question? What's your question?
Hi, I'm Wanda Fernald, and I'm the school nurse at Mount Desert Elementary. And I'm hopeful for optional masking, and I think we are very, very close. I would like to just add, based on the science, that the headline is that as of March 9th, we're going to a recommendation of optional masking.
Gentlemen, I will recess this meeting if the argument continues. Someone is
He
speaking.
asked me a question. Sorry.
Okay, that's enough.
I just wanted to say that, you know, there's this big headline that says the state DOE and CDC are recommending optional masking, but there's a lot of fine lines underneath that. And one of them is what Dr. Shaw is saying. He says, not every school is going to be ready today to go optional masking. It is based on your school's statistics. It's based on your rate of transmission. Hancock County just changed to medium risk, which has nothing to do with really our positivity rate in the school. Has to do with, we have hospital beds, we have treatment, we have resources available if somebody is severely ill from COVID. But most of our cases are not going to be severely ill. But what could happen, because we do have several cases in the school right now, and we still have high risk of transmission right now, is that we're going to end up with 30 kids absent for 5 days or 10 days. We could end up with the whole middle school staff out sick. Those are going to cause a lot more absences and a lot more possibility of school closure. So if the goal is to keep our kids in school learning, then I really feel we need to wait till our exposure rate is low. And then we go with optional masking. Dr. Krebins mentioned that we should be fluid. He's anticipating that we're going to go optional masking now and then mandatory masking when we have a surge. So I don't think our kids are going to be that fluid. I don't think it's going to go that well. I think we ought to make sure we're at a good point before we do it. Thanks.
Thank you all for coming to comment, last comment, and then we'll have our discussions, and then we're going to have our we'll have a second.
So I've actually read the test that the Board of Education, State of Maine used. I don't know if you guys have or not even gonna ask you. All of the studies that were done were inconclusive. They did a huge one in Georgia where they tested 90,000 students. And that was also inconclusive that the masks work. The science has not enough information proving that masks actually, the mitigation wearing a mask work. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not going to get into debate whether they do or not. But the fact of the matter is, it should be the kid's choice.
should be the parents' choice. We are the parents. Parents get to make the health, medical decisions. None of you have medical degrees. I'm
That's
assuming,
right.
I don't know.
That's right.
So therefore, you shouldn't be making medical decisions for our kids. I understand you've got to worry about all kids. And not every kid is the same, and everyone has different levels of immunity. But my kid's been kicked out of school twice for 10 days each. He never had COVID either time. So therefore, the whole premise of kids getting kicked out of school for 30 days, I mean, transmission, that doesn't work. And really what I'm here for is what the masks are doing to the kids. I have 13 pages of studies by epidemiologists that say masks aren't working and they're not good for the kids. Children can face psychological harm from masking, including robotic and emotional interactions, anxiety and depression. And this is according to professors of medicine at Johns Hopkins University and Tufts University. The possible psychological harm of widespread masking is even greater worry. Facial expressions are integral to human connections, particularly for young children who are only learning how to signal fear, confusion, and happiness. Covering a child's face mutes these nonverbal forms of communication, result in robotic and emotionless interactions, anxiety, and depression. Seeing people speak is a building block of phonic development. It is especially important for children with disabilities such as hearing impairment. My kid's got a speech problem. You guys had him in a school, in a corner, by himself, on a computer, on a Zoom call with the speech therapist in a mask. No way any of you could tell me that makes sense. It does not make sense. They need to be able to see mouth. They need it. They need to see facial expressions. It's development. It's all about development. These kids need this. Now, if you, as a parent, don't feel that your kid can go to school without a mask, I'm not saying they don't. But my kid deserves the right to go to school without a mask. He deserves it. Now, I'd like to leave this here, but I'm pretty sure I sent it to you guys. I sent other things too, but
Did you send it in your public, get in your public?
yes, I
comment?
did.
Then we have it.
Okay.
Public comment after our discussion. So thank you all for commenting, and now we're gonna kind of circle so we can hear each other for our discussion. Yes. So, start with is Mike's recommendation and report, and then we'll go from there. And then I'll take comments, questions, thoughts. Sound good?
So, thank you all. So I guess I want to start, I shared a document with everyone over the weekend that sort of laid out some of the data that we have in terms of vaccination status for our students and our staff. Also state CDC vaccination status and rates for our towns and for Hancock County and the state of Maine as a whole. And then I listed a series of mitigation strategies that we have used throughout this process of dealing with this pandemic, and using layered strategies as an approach to protect our students, our staff, and our community. And some of the biggest ones that have changed over time since that initial meeting in August was the availability of testing, which we have, and also vaccination. I think those two pieces have done quite a bit to be able to get us to where we are today. I also shared in the information, what our numbers were for COVID cases this past week. And that total was, I think it was around 18, overall. I think, what's really important is a recognition is that we have continually expressed and used layered supports as a way of mitigating COVID-19 within our schools and with our communities. And we have, as an administration and as a school board, followed CDC guidance. I think that has been very important in all of our meetings, all of the meetings of our nurses and discussing changes in the SOP. And currently, there will be an SOP coming out within the next day or two, I presume, in terms of answering some questions that have come out of the state's recommendation that there is the option of going maskless. I know that many in our community, other schools in our community in Hancock County, have slowly made the switch to being mask optional. At the same time, making sure that they continue to ask folks to get vaccinated, which would be something that would be very important to me. That's a piece. To increase our pool testing numbers, because pool testing is one of those factors that allows us to have that quick knowledge of cases in school and be able to have them isolate so that they can go through their period without infecting others. I would see that as trying to increase those numbers. So we have that flexibility. In the new guidance, it states that folks who do have to go into isolation because of positive cases, that they would need to isolate, as I said, for 5 days. And they would follow our process and CDC guidance of being tested on day 6. If they're negative, they stay home. If they are positive, then, if they're negative, they come to school, but they would have to wear a mask for the remainder of that quarantine period. But if they were positive, then they would stay home for the protection of the community. I see those as, very important factors. I think we would continue to do symptom monitoring. I think that has been extremely helpful in terms of how our parents have supported our schools. That checking if a child is sick, and if they are, then recognizing that, well, maybe we should stay home and see whether or not those resolve or those will continue. And if they continue, to possibly have a test. We have been very lucky to receive antigen tests that we have been able to use to be able to see if folks are positive. And I think symptom monitoring is one of those, another layered pieces of those tools. Distancing within classrooms. We have been asked to do that to the best extent possible. And if you look at various classrooms, it's a little different based on the environment of that classroom, whether that is lunchrooms here at the high school or lunchrooms at the elementary schools. It looks a little different, but the idea is still to do our best to maintain distance in a variety of situations. It's not perfect, all of it. In terms of ventilation, we are coming to a point where it is starting to get warmer. The idea of taking a look at our ventilation systems, which we have done continually throughout this pandemic, and ensuring that they are doing the best that they can by changing filters and looking at new modes of making sure that we have really good ventilation systems in our schools. But that extra classroom piece of opening one window with a fan pointing out, opening a door to your hallway as a way of supporting ventilation when it's a little bit colder. All of our schools have done a fabulous job in the springtime in supporting outside lunch for our students and being outside for classes. Right now, we're in that kind of what we call that saddle season or that shoulder season, where there are days like today where it's really reasonable, and there might be other days when a little bit colder, but you don't have to have a window wide open to make sure that you have an appropriate type of ventilation within your classroom. And I think most importantly, in thinking about the idea of potentially lifting and making masks optional, and I want to make that point, is that it would be optional. If we are following CDC guidance and we make masking optional, And I have the opportunity to make a choice based on CDC guidance. If we go red, if we have outbreaks, or within our hospitals, there is concern of increase, then we can go back to having masks and be able to have that fluctuation. I think Dr. Crevens made that pretty clear. I believe, others have also said that we might be in a period where there might be that sort of back and forth. I don't know if we'll ever be to a point where there will be 0 cases, within our community. But some of those extra layers, pool testing, ventilation, vaccination, are those pieces that we will continue to do in our schools. I think that we have done a fabulous job throughout the Omicron surge, that we still have students participating in sports and doing those activities. I think by having a flexible approach, we can continue and go through the end of the year, taking care of our community, taking care of our staff, and taking care of our students. I know, in terms of our nurses have spoke eloquently. I honor the work that they do every single day and have really appreciated being in, the new role that I have in working with them, and appreciate their expertise. And on our meetings, we have oftentimes gone back and forth on what are some of the recommendations that we would need to do. Some of them we have agreed with and gone forward, and even done some of the extra pieces that the CDC had suggested in terms of especially testing on that 6th day to provide that extra level of support. I think, one of the differences I'm feeling that, as we have decided to sort of say we will follow guidance, that as that guidance changed on the 9th, and as our other local communities across the state are making changes while still supporting a layered approach, I think that it would require a tremendous amount of energy to support the expectations if we kind of maintain our masking for a little while longer. And so I think it's important to recognize that. I think it's important to recognize that some of when I spoke to our medical liaisons at the hospital, of recognizing that if we do go mask optional, there is the possibility that we will see an uptick. I don't know what that uptick would be. There was a recognition that there's a sense that our community would be able to support whatever the needs are, that would occur. And I think that's important information to be able to know. But whatever the decision is, I think, most importantly is the ability to have flexibility in being able to meet the needs that pop up within our community and be able to make decisions by, what it looks like on the ground, just like Dr. Shaw had said, in supporting that idea of having some sort of flexibility within your chance to sort of make decisions. As we know, Maine had a huge backlog of cases. And if you were to read through the information, it's hard to tell, where, whether or not when we were high, that a lot of that was due to backlog. If you were to go to the CDC site today, you can see that we are dropping. And I think that's very positive for us. And so, I understand it's a tough decision. And I will do whatever I'm asked to do, and the administrative team will do whatever they have asked to do, whether that is to go optional, and then to be able to have the opportunity to say, hey, we have to go and put on masks because we're noticing that there is spread or we have gone red, or if to maintain masking for a particular period of time based on the information in our schools, then there's that. But we will do what we are asked to do.
Yeah. Thank you for everything you've been doing for us. And thank you to all you guys up here. I know we've been having 4, 5, 6 hour long meetings for weeks now, it feels like. So thank you guys for keep showing up and having these hard conversations. I just want to bring your attention to the letter you sent. It says, regardless of any decision made on the 7th, the following mitigating factors will continue. And then it says what we're already still doing. I'm just kind of confused as to why we're having 2 separate conversations. I feel like we're having the mask conversation but we're not having the mitigating. And I feel like they coincide, so when you think
I'll
about.
clarify.
Yeah, please.
The masking decision is one the board sort of created, asked that be I want to say a policy, because it wasn't a policy, but a mandate for our schools to have masking. All other mitigating factors were led up to our nurses and our safety teams and the CDC. We utilizes the CDC guidance as a way of those other mitigating factors. And masks were one of those, but masks were in particular placed as a decision for the board to make.
All of the mask is the one thing you may remember that we voted for the mask mandate back in the fall, but then all the other four had less administrative procedures for whatever reason. So now we're dealing with that.
With that one that we've already.
And those would continue.
Jennifer and related parents. And you.
This is definitely a very hot topic. I think people are either here or here and nowhere here. So one of the concerns that I had is if we vote for making it an option, what kind of mitigating factors are we going to have if you have a child or a teacher who does or doesn't want a mask, and then you have a child or a teacher who ostracizes them for that? There needs to be an AOS disciplinary action across the AOS for somebody who's going to bully somebody because they choose to wear a mask, and we say it's optional, or bully somebody who chooses not to wear a mask. And I think that's something we need to think about as well.
So-
Mike and I can have thought about that.
Yeah, and I would say, bullying is not new in our society, and that happens for a variety of things, whether it's, you could look over history, whether it's weight, height, how tall you are, the color of your eyes, any of those things have happened, in schools. I think our schools have done a wonderful job, and this wouldn't be any different on any other day. We have policies and we have procedures to take care of bullying when someone might be insensitive. You can walk into the Tremont School and sort of see the sign when you walk in that talks about kindness. And those are things that are talked about every day in schools. It's not new for our teachers to be able to address those pieces. It's not new for our administrators to be able to support students. It's not new to our guidance counselors to be able to have conversations when it's reported that something had happened and be able to have a teachable moment for those individuals. I think we do those things now. It's important, and it might be more heightened to pay attention to. And we may or we may not hear those things. You can walk into Pennatic and see the little kindergarten Be Kind bees that were placed around the school as reminders of how we need to be as individuals. I would expect, and I know that administrators have been talking to students, about the fact of being kind and reasonable to each other, because we have many differences, and one of those differences might be the decision to wear a mask or not wear a mask. And that's something that we can support, and I think that's okay. I think it's important, and we need to highlight it. But I think our schools and our staff have done a very good job of taking care of that. I don't think we need any new measures. We just need to have heightened awareness.
I am Robin Sue Shapley, who is a member of the our school board, is not here tonight, but he asked me to read this. So, from Robin Sue. I'm very sorry that I could not be here tonight at this meeting. I was the one who pushed for the initial vote on masking and was the only one who voted not to mandate masks. While I was disappointed with my lonely vote, I understood where everyone else was coming from. I'm hopeful that with the decreasing rate of transmission, the plea from the public, and those schools around us that have dropped the mandate, that tonight you, my fellow board members, will change your initial vote and remove the mandate. All year we have heard about how resilient our kids are, but are they really? Or are they just following the rules that they've been made to follow for 2 years? I knew we were probably leaving our most vulnerable children behind, but after reading letters from teachers Amber Newman and Patty Gallias, I know we are. My own children who don't have sensory issues don't deal with speech issues and in general don't struggle with learning are very much struggling with not seeing facial expressions, are constantly being reminded on how to wear their mask and have to get up and go in the corner if they want a simple drink from their water bottle. I have one child who struggled with headaches before COVID and now constantly comes home from school dehydrated and in need of medicine for a headache because they're afraid to seek out help at school for fear of being sent home. If they could drink freely at their desk, it would make a huge difference. And this is just a very small side effect. Our most vulnerable children are being left behind to hopefully get the chance to play catch up when the masks finally come off. Cases are falling, vaccination rates are high. What is it we are waiting for to make this decision? Those who wish can still mask if that makes them comfortable, but those who wish to breathe freely and smile at their classmates and teachers should also be able to make this choice. Please, I urge you all to vote to remove the mandates in our schools. I appreciate each and every respectful letter, no matter what side you stand on. There is no need for name calling. I know it isn't always easy to put ourselves out there in these situations, and I know some are afraid what peers might say, do, or think if we go against them. As a school board member, I am forever grateful for everyone for writing letters. Thank you.
Harry, and then Danny Whitehead. First of all, I just wanted to clarify, Mike, I couldn't quite understand when you said that you had spoken to the doctors at the hospital and what our community could handle or couldn't handle as far as additional hospitalizations and such. Did you say that they felt that we could handle it or that we could not handle it?
We could, yeah.
Okay.
And you're speaking in broad terms, not necessarily thinking that just because you remove masks in school, but that all of a sudden it's just tremendous spike, but the recognition that as policies and things change, that the hospital is in a reasonable place and that there are not only vaccination, but that there are other measures in terms of, for those who can't have vaccinations, of other therapies that are more available that weren't available in the past.
So then if I could just, I'll make my personal statement. I've gone back and forth on this so many times. I take very seriously my vote on the school board and my position to make these decisions or to contribute to these decisions. For me, a lot of it comes down to who are our most vulnerable, and our kids are vulnerable in so many ways. What we're concerned about, I look at my kids and I think anxiety has been a huge spike for them. But it's not anxiety about wearing a mask. It's anxiety about dying of COVID. And so, we've changed so many things for our kids through these last 3 school years. I don't know that the mask is the denominator that really is the one that's punishing or hurting our children. So,
and she is.
I stated that this was my personal opinion, so thank you. I worry about the kids who are too young to be vaccinated. I worry about the kids whose parents refuse to vaccinate them and don't have the ability to go do it themselves. I worry about our teachers who, some of them have health problems. And I just worry that we may be moving too quickly. 2.5 months ago, I canceled a trip to Connecticut for Christmas because all of a sudden things were going crazy with Omicron. My cousin, who's a doctor, who is a surgeon, was being conscripted into having to treat COVID patients because there were so many patients in New York that they didn't have enough doctors to go around. We knew that we had people who were trying to find hospital beds across the state and couldn't find them. We're having to be moved to different states because we just don't have the volume here. And so I don't think we're there right now, but I do worry about, as everybody's taking the masks off, will we get there? Because these things can come on so quickly. I was traveling for work in Kentucky in the first week of December, and we were hearing the tiniest little, news about there's 1 case in California, there's 2 cases in New York. 3 weeks later, there were millions of cases. We just don't know what this virus is doing yet. And I do worry that if we move too quickly, that we're putting ourselves in danger. So I am willing to listen to anybody's opinion and will try to be smart about it and thoughtful about it, but those are my concerns.
Amy, and then Tammy, and then Blaine.
So just as a board in each of these COVID inflection points, as we has to sort of think about them, deliberate on them, one of the, in large part, one of the big data points that we had was the specific recommendation of the local COVID task force. So I'm just wondering for this decision, which I think is probably the biggest one we've made in the last year or so, what's their specific recommendation as to whether the school should go masks optional or not?
I was not able to attend that meeting because I had another obligation for another school board meeting, but I think Gail was there.
I wasn't,
Oh, you're
I
right.
got the letter from J.R. Evans. So,
Yeah.
Was it his personal letter or is that the COVID task force?
No, it's not the task force, but he's the infectious disease.
I mean, I could, I could, and Gail, I can share pieces of that letter that.
Did their meeting, did any specific recommendation come out of their meeting? I'm guessing attendance at that meeting would be required to get their recommendation.
Yeah, I didn't hear of any recommendation from the COVID task force.
Was one asked for?
I did not ask for one. No. I didn't know that they were meeting it, so it was too late.
But I think JR was fairly clear in his assessment that there were risks, but it was an appropriate move to make. I mean, Bill can read his letter. He is the expert on that task force. You want to read his opinion about it?
I'll read excerpts of it because some of it is just too much. I've recently been asked about my thoughts on changing state and federal guidance regarding masks in public places. First, we need to be clear that the federal and state recommendations to consider not requiring masks was not based on any inference that masks do not help prevent transmission. It was based on an estimation that in most areas sufficient resources are available for medical response to infections. This is true when case counts are low, human resources and hospital beds are available, and specialized medical medications needed for prevention and treatment of inadequate supply. Several weeks ago, when the same question was raised, none of those things were true, now are all partially true in our area. There is a strong possibility that there will be more COVID infections in our community if masks are not required than if they continue to be required. The hospital anticipates this and feels we are likely to have an adequate staffing even with this. Based on the information above, it would be reasonable for this. I am cutting out some stuff. It just gets more technical. Based on the information above, it would be reasonable for the school districts to lift its masking mandate. It would also be reasonable to continue for a few more weeks based upon competing priorities. Based on evidence elsewhere, if masks are allowed but not mandated, I would be very concerned that we as a community take strong steps to protect students who exercise the choice to mask or not from harassment either by other students or especially by adults. Finally, I should note that while stopping masking at this time is reasonable, we need to be brutally honest about the severity of COVID-19, the high likelihood of recurrent waves, and the strong possibility that we will need to again respond as a community. More Americans have died of COVID in the past 6 months than died in the 10 years prior from influenza and the flu. We have now had 5 waves of infection in the United States, 3 to 8 months apart, with the most recent one being the second highest for deaths, despite the widespread availability of an effective vaccine and some availability of effective medication. Death rates have varied by a factor of over 400% between different states, depending on their choices. Coronavirus make their way in the world by evolving immune escapes, and there is no reason to think that we will not have to tighten and respond again. On a personal note, I actually see this as a reason to loosen restrictions when we can, with open eyes to the need to change course in the future. That's his sort of personal professional.
Well, these are kind of a quiet type, but I got a lot to say. I did talk to Dr. Krebs on Friday, because I wanted to. Multiple committees with him, so I trust him and I know. One thing he did say to me was that there will be a spike if we go to the mask optional. There will be a spike in infections, and that we need to know that both students being out, but also staff and teachers. And after we just had our meeting, our meeting, where basically we're told that they can barely function because they have so many staff out. I don't think now is the time to do that, because if we have even 2 or 3 more people out, we're gonna have to shut school down. And then a lot of things, I don't believe this is the right time to remove the masks. Trust me, I want to get rid of them. I'm tired of them too. I've talked to my kids. They're both tired of them, but they don't want to potentially catch more spread. They're both active in other activities and still go do things together as a family. And luckily, we've been lucky. Another thing is about, there's so many multi-generational families out there. I know a lot of people who are going through chemotherapy or have that organ transplant with immune compromise. Another thing I talked to Dr. Krebs about was that, yes, there are medications that immune compromised people could start taking to help it as effective as a vaccine when a vaccine is not going to work. But right now, they're only just getting started with that, getting released. That's going to be months before they're available everywhere. Now they're going to go to the larger cities first, and that coming to our for some time. And this pandemic's been declared dead several times, and we just had one of the biggest waves ever. I don't think it's ready at all. And another thing Dr. Krebs says, you're going to get hate no matter what we decide. And I would rather take the hate and the grief from people trying to protect people. So and another thing, when people compare and go, you see stadiums full of people without masks, restaurants, people go out to restaurants and stuff. You're not required to go to a restaurant, a concert, a sporting event, but you are required to go to school. That's a big difference. You can make a choice. They have freedom of choice. They can go anywhere they want. We're not telling them no, they can't go on vacation to Disney World. Go do it. Have fun. When they're here, we're looking to protect everybody. We have to provide an education to everyone, including immunocompromised people who can't be vaccinated and all that. And I'd rather sit there and say we're going to protect everybody instead of saying about the mixed among us or something like that. That's an issue. We have to protect. We have that ability.
John and Patrick.
With Gigzo Max optional, what's the criteria for, okay, now we've got an uptick. What's the threshold to go back? Are we all coming back here and doing this again? Or are we going to have a motion that says, okay, if we get to a certain threshold, we all the way back?
Whether we did it now or not, but Mike and I talked about, and I would envision is the point which is that we would give that purview to the superintendent as a procedure, like we do with the other mitigation strategies, so that he could say, he in consultation with the CDC and the, local disease expert, whatever, so that we wouldn't meet, he would make that call. I mean, obviously, he'd probably consult with the boards, but he wouldn't be able to come back for a public procedure.
I would just like to talk with the superintendent a little bit about what his thoughts are for criteria. One thing I'm thinking of is, okay, we say, oh, okay, certain thresholds of pool testing. Once we take the mask off, I'm betting we're going to have a drop off in pool testing. And it'll be less and less of a useful tool to tell us what the state of each school community. But before I respond to that, the next thing was, if we have a staff member who would rather the kids wear masks in their classroom, are we saying that that staff member doesn't have control of their brains if they're immunocompromised, if they're otherwise concerned?
The first question, in terms of, John, what the threshold would be, I think using the CDC guidance and whether or not we're green, yellow, or red, that would be one piece. I think the state of Maine has its threshold in terms of schools closures and outbreaks, and I would use that. And then I would also consult with nurses and the local hospital. But there are local criteria that would need to be met as another piece of information to make that decision if it got to a critical point where masking would be appropriate. The third question, I think if we were to go mask optional, I wouldn't want to have something in place where individuals are picking and choosing. I think that this becomes really difficult on kids and parents and teachers. It's either we're mask optional and people are making choices, or we're not and we're holding steady for a little while. Second question I've forgotten. I got the beginning and I got.
I was just concerned about poll testing.
Oh, poll testing. I have continued to support and push, on pool testing, and I know that principals have continued. I think pool testing, if we are to remove a mitigating factor, the ability to continue and recognize that that simple test is a reasonable tool to be able to know if there is virus coming into the school, so we can then have them leave. Our nurses do a great job of testing kids with sniffles if they happen to come in. And parents have been wonderful in recognizing that, and then to make sure that they are out of the schools so they are not, within the mix. But I would continue to push, vigorously for continued pool testing. We have a lot of tests, antigen-wise, to be able to support an increase, whether those are what we have purchased and what the federal government has recently sent us to.
Patrick and then what?
So really mine is sort of what John asked, and I haven't really heard a clear like outline of what is the metric or what are we gonna follow? Like if we do go mask optional, what is the threshold? And I've heard like we'll go with this, but I've not heard any concrete. This is the threshold on X, Y, and Z that would indicate that masks are no longer be on.
Well, being identified as red through the CDC, through their guidance on the county-wide map that is now available, that would be the first criteria. The second criteria would be looking at, the outbreak status that the CDC already has about 15% of the population. The third one, I would want to work with nurses to find out what would be most appropriate. But the first one and the biggest one was, are we red? And the CDC, you could link and look at that site pretty quickly to see if we are ready to be able to say masks need to go back on.
We were red last week.
Well, I'm like, it's difficult to ask me to vote on something without having the known thresholds and metrics. Like you're throwing out the 1, 2, and maybe 3 consultation, but to ask me to vote on it without knowing what they are and outlined in detail and written down somewhere to make an educated decision. I'd also second what Jamie was sort of alluding to. This is probably the biggest decision that we've been asked to make, and there hasn't been any guidance from the task force provider. Makes it difficult. And so then I would defer to what the nurses wrote and signed as being the next body of professionals in the environment and living it day to day.
I think I should clarify, the only thing we'll be voting on tonight is about whether we are refilling our mandate that we require masks at all times, because if we turn something into a, like, we aren't voting on the point at which we would have to come back and vote again if we were to say, we're not voting on a second set of metrics tonight. Does that make sense? If we, what we would be voting on tonight is whether we maintain our mandate or we repeal our mandate if we do a vote.
Right, but I'm sorry, but didn't you just say that we would write it or say it in such a way that we would leave it to the superintendent to make the decision whether it was no longer optional?
Well, when something's then it becomes an administrative procedure, then the superintendent is determining those metrics, right? Like, I mean,
Right, and before I hand that off to the superintendent, I would like to know what those metrics are.
Eliza and then Karen.
Just a brief question. Do you have updated numbers on the staff? No, you have the numbers.
Just what you saw in those who chose to share information with the board. I think, you know, there were in conversations with the association, informal conversations, I think they would say that it's probably a mix, just like it is in the general population. I don't have exact numbers of what it is, but I think you kind of saw that difference within the comments that were shared.
Tammy, Gail, and then Elise, but I just want to respond. I mean, I think one of the challenges in discussing this is I think we could look at some specific metrics, but a part of it is that there aren't like, I mean, we could look at something specific, like if we're in red, we would go back. But a lot of the kind of things are things that, you know, we can't anticipate a new variant, or we can't anticipate certain kinds of what school might have an outbreak, or what, there's a lot of metric data that's not possible, like in the context of a motion or something like that. Like there's no way we would anticipate all those metrics in this kind of context. I mean, I think we have to imagine that if we're delegating to someone and saying to someone, you're going to consult with the CDC and public health experts, that they're going to make those kind of assessments. I mean, it feels like an impossibility beyond saying certain things, very general things like in red, to anticipate all the metric points that would be there. I mean, but, Eliza and Karen.
We were lucky, you and I, 2 years, because we pretty much stayed home. I just want to say that that's why I asked about where are we getting these numbers from. I'm an EMT. I was the only one responding to 2 years, every single call. The past couple of months, since December, I haven't seen anything like this ever. It's just totally crazy. Call Lifeline. You're my right arm. Because I'm on an island. And if you're out there and you need help quickly and quality, I want Lifeline there, but they're going to take you to Bangor or possibly Boston within a half hour to Boston from Swan Island. They have not been available. The one time they came, I had 2 people die in our community, die because they could not get there because they were taking so many COVID patients. The last time they came, they said, we're probably not going to see you for a while, but everything, the numbers are down, but they're not. One of the things that we're not talking about, I've done it, my family's done it, is home test. How many of people that have home tested, and I'm not going to, I'm just saying, put it on your mind, friends and neighbors, how many people that got those great home tests, I was thankful for them, how many called the number on the box? How many became part of that number that we're seeing? There's thousands and thousands of tests out there. I have people telling me, a whole family, well, we tested one person and they were positive, so we stayed home for 5 days. And then everybody went out. The one kid got tested in school, and they were fine. I'm just saying, we don't know. And somebody's scaring them because in EMT, I get things that you guys don't get every day. One of the things they're finding is that all the kids that we thought were just like mild cases, my 3-month-old grandbaby got COVID because mama decided to send the kids to school after 2 years of homeschool. 3 weeks. And we went on vacation. You were shut down. Right before vacation. How would you like it if your 3-month-old child or grandchild is now facing something like that disability? But that's one of the things we're not talking about. That it does affect the brain a little bit. A growing brain, talking about our growing brains, or, you know, this is the worst thing ever. When my grandchildren was born deaf, she can hear now. This is not fun for her. She's the first one that said, put your mask on, Rennie, be safe. We don't know, we don't know. This is the craziness of COVID. This is the craziness of Omicron. It's taken our community thousands of cases. Thousands of cases. I mean, you can nod your head all you want, but I would come to your house and see you. I'd be the first one on scene saying, let me help you. Let's get you to the hospital. Because that's what it's about. You have to think right on yourself. And I've been exposed a couple of times. I've been lucky enough not to get it yet. But we have to think about how best to protect our kids. I don't think we're quite there yet. And I've been blasted just like all of you. I have a lot of upset parents. I have a lot of upset board members. And I get it. I get it. We're all sick to death. This is just minor for me. I've developed an allergy cleaner. That's why I was coughing. All that Purell around me makes me cough. This is one of the things that's a side effect that we're all facing. I'm just saying we have to think about it and agree to disagree. We're not all going to agree in this room. There's no way we are. Because we're all angry or in fight or flight. But I'm just saying that you don't understand that it might right now at this moment the hospital might be okay, but we've had more people on ventilators. We've had more people die. We've had more children catch this variant because it doesn't give a crap that we don't want to wear a mask. It doesn't care if we want to wear a mask. It's going to come for you. And we just have to think about it. How can we best protect our community right now?
Jessica asked.
Yeah. So I think a lot of our, like what our purpose here is to try to keep our kids in school as much as possible. And we've also always gone to like, hey, we're following the recommendations of the CDC. And we have been in a lot of different, I would say, situations within these past 2 years. And we've been trying to build back some consistency. And with this new recommendation of having masks optional, it coincides with what we've been trying to promote, which is consistency. And being like, yep, this is where our facts are coming from, this is where we're hearing from. And I just think it would help add to the consistency and kind of build back better, so to speak. The other thing too is, for me, we're all sharing stories. For me, it's not necessarily the mask, it's the kids coming home because they have headaches. When you know the child suffers from migraines. It's the kids coming home who have allergies because they have a stuffy nose, but we know they have allergies. So I think, and I'm not voting tonight, so I think irregardless of the decision that comes out of here tonight, we really need to redefine our mitigation factors.
Yeah.
I'd just like to talk a minute about the task force. I'm not on it. My husband's been on it since the beginning. It's comprised of elected officials, some health officials, members of the Chamber of Commerce, town managers, park superintendent, COA president. It's not a body that's going to give, and it's got people from the hospital. It's got Dr. Trevins that's always there. And when you get recommendations and information about what you should do from a public health point of view, it's pretty much coming from the hospital personnel. It doesn't come from the task force. So there are people within that group who can give you good advice, but it's not going to be, you're not going to get a recommendation from the task force. It just isn't how it's composed. It isn't how it works. But what you heard tonight was information that people have gleaned that Dr. Kervins has written. So, and I think if he were here, then we could ask him something. But I think he's not.
I think the thing that keeps going through my mind, and I'm thankful for everyone commenting, sending letters, you know, we have stood here and worked together and followed a series of decision makings that have revolved around guidance from the CDC, both federal and state, for the past 3 years. And that is the threshold from which we have, in addition to consulting with epidemiologists, local public health officials, members of the COVID task force that are physicians and that do this for a living. And decision after decision, we have held very tightly those recommendations and the guidance that is federal and state guidance. We have held that up to our community as an invitation to join us in this fight together to protect our kids and keep them in school. I know the worst few months of my life, as it was yours, was when my kids were in school. And the moment they were able to luckily go back every single day, at least at Connors Emerson, was mask or mask was it was like a whole new world. So we invited our community, we listened to our experts, we followed CDC guidance, and we made a decision together, and we've asked people to come forward with us to do that. And for me, it's a huge challenge and it's a huge ask. And I'm very sensitive to the really important and eloquent and heartbreaking and pleading of our nurses. And I see that and I hear that, but it's very hard for me to decide to make a decision that is all of a sudden not based in the decision-making process and framework that we have upheld and adhered to for the past 3 years. So, this recommendation accepts those, uses that as a framework, uses CDC and federal guidelines, the coding as the framework for the recommendation. It aligns us as all of our recommendations and all of our decision-making has been aligned with those bodies and with the local bodies of information that we're getting. So this recommendation is something I feel like we need to support with the idea that the last time we sat here, we also, I believe, made sure that there was, I think maybe you and I, Roger, asked, like, if we do the mask mandate and when something changes, do we have to come back and is there enough flexibility in the motion that we're making so that we can change and reflect and be flexible with the decisions and other mitigations in the school? And I think at that point, other than the mask, there were. In other words, there was enough flexibility in the recommendation so that the superintendent didn't need to, like if something changed on Monday, the superintendent could on Tuesday use the resources that he had to make mitigation strategies either lessened or heightened. And so I think if we accept Mike's proposal and we have a motion, which I have one kind of ish, that is reflective of what he just put forth, then we're completely aligning ourselves with the way we've made decisions in the past. We are aligning ourselves with the community that we asked to join us in this, regardless of how you feel about one thing or the other. And my children, guess what? If we do this, they've already said, we're gonna probably wear masks, Mom, for the next whatever day, two, whatever. You'll probably make a decision to do that. And I'm letting them do that. I talked to them about that. What if Mom goes in there and does this, how are you gonna feel about that? But they know that they have, they look to us to make these decisions, and we've been making them consistently with the same metrics and the same guidelines from the same bodies of science for the past 3 years. So I think we need to do that again. And I can make a motion and see who raises their hand or seconds me. Can I make the motion and then somebody votes? Okay, all right. Yeah.
I still don't even know how I'm gonna vote, to be honest with you, but like you said just now, you want to honor the recommendation, and I fully agree with that. We have been following the CDC guidelines, and I think that's important. But I also think it's important what John said is that Hancock County was red last week. I mean, I think a good compromise, and I don't know who's ready to compromise, I would hope more people would be, is that we do honor the recommendation, but also honor our nurses and give it 2 weeks, give it 3 weeks. Let's see if we can stay out of the red for 2 weeks. I don't think that's going to do irreparable harm to anybody who's already been used to wearing a mask for 2 years, you know, in the schools. I get it. I'm done too. I have 2 kids in school. They want to be done. We all want to be done. But just because all of a sudden we're out of the red for 4 days, I don't know that that gives us, you know, the leeway to just jump right into, all right, let's see what happens. I'm fully convinced once we do remove the mask that our numbers are going to spike. I have no question that that is going to happen. And I would just hate to be sitting here, you know, 3 or 4 weeks from now with our caseloads jumping, saying, you know, maybe if we had just waited a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks till the weather warms up and with the windows open, that gets us closer to spring break, where none of the kids, you know, everybody will be out of the schools for a week as well. I'm not coming up with a specific timeline, but I'm just saying maybe it's, I don't even know if the motion could be that, you know, like we could say, let's release the mandate, but let's wait until a specific date to do it. That's where
Yeah.
Eliza and then Gail.
Actually, is there a way for us to come up with a later date to start this? But I also started on the same way. I would love, is that an option? So we can have a different date,
That is an option. I had brought that idea. I think there were people that were some concerns about that idea. I think we may have answered those concerns.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think in terms of, you know, what we have said in terms of providing the fact that we have sort of pitched our wagon to the CDC and, you know, utilize that guidance, sort of guiding our decision-making throughout this entire process. And, you know, recognizing the fact that, yeah, we were red, and I think most of the reports, you know, would share, and you know, conversations with Dr. Carbons and others is, you know, there was a backlog of whether even last night, as I was trying to think myself through these things, is, you know, are those numbers real, and are we really green because we're yellow right now, and who's to say, you know, we're still going through that backlog. You know, I think that information is still out there. And so, you know, you could make that choice as a way of trying to sort of think through all the options that are available and providing an opportunity for that little bit of window of time, and then it becomes my decision after that. You know, I think, like I shared, you know, earlier, depending on the acceptance of that, you know, in the community, it just might be a heavy lift in terms of trying to support that expectation. We would do it and support it. I'm just saying that those are some of the factors that you think about, just like, you know, trying to think about whether it's too early and there's potentially, you know, a spike going on. There's also potentially, you know, what you might have to do administratively to, you know, extend that 2 weeks to support that decision.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to comment on the business of us being in the red until very recently. I think we had 60,000 cases that the state was behind in reporting positive cases, and they were processing through those, and so they were pumping big numbers into the federal system that were real cases, but they were artificially high in terms of when they happened. So if you had had us, and I think that my understanding is they're just about through that backlog, but my understanding is that if you looked at our case numbers that were actually happening, then we might well not have been. That was just an aberration at the beginning of their system. So where we, beyond that, I don't know, but I don't think that was entirely accurate, but where we are at this moment.
Jamie and then Roger and then Jamie, sorry.
Just
Mike, can you elaborate a little bit? I wasn't exactly following you, what you were saying about the 2-week delay and how that's gonna cause, there's a heavy lift involved with that. Well, I guess I
I
wasn't.
think in
following.
managing compliance, I mean, after the CDC has
Okay.
made a statement about it's okay to go, and, you know, it's human nature, looking at your broader community, whether that's Hancock County, Waldo, and looking around. There's a, you know, you would hope, especially if there's an end date that is stated, that there is a recognition of compliance, but compliance, I mean, we deal with that all the time, and we, you know, have to deal with that, but that would be the issue.
In schools.
Yes.
Jamie and then Lily.
Just because we're talking about recommendations and guidance, just to be specific, as I read what Dr. Shaw said, was he wasn't making a specific recommendation, or the state CDC was not making a specific recommendation that schools go mask optional. They were no longer saying that it's mandated, that the recommendation was mandated, and they deferred to local control, and they also deferred to the federal CDC, who still maintains that strong recommendation for universal masking. So I think it's just important that we haven't followed guidance and we can continue to do that. And then we're deferring to local control, I think, again, in absence of any other recommendation, our frontline nurses, I think we really need to, especially if that's one of the thresholds for determining if we go back, at least at this point, as we make a decision, I think we should keep that as well.
Can we hear Marie's motion?
Well, I mean, it's, no, really, that's, I mean, I think Ray got it.
Brian, you got a comment?
Yeah. So the idea of the local control, I think, is the thing that for me matters a lot of it, because we do have experts that have been a part of this for a long time and have been informing how we manage our schools. We have, you know, the administration and we have the nurses, and I want them to be able to make the call as they see the need to make the call. And I think that that's the intent that I'm understanding as well of what the main CDC is now saying. And so fundamentally, what I think what we're doing here and what we're asking about, I think what the motion is getting to is really just flipping a switch of where that control resides. We as a board took that control when we voted to mandate masks for this year, and we're essentially just transferring that control to the panel of our administrators, along with the nurses, and having a good understanding of what we have locally in our community, and using that and the best metrics that they can come up with, which they have flexibility to modify through time, and make the decisions at the individual schools and for the spaces and places that we have. So it's really just sort of transferring that authority to this team that we have to do that for us. And I think that's where it needs to reside. I think that kind of local control is what we need to do, versus every time we want to make a change relative to this one mitigation strategy, we have to come back as a board each time and have a special meeting. And it really needs to reside with our trained professionals, I think. And so that's where the motion is heading. I think I can support that. But I do think that we need to listen to that team, and that, but to me, it feels a little too soon. But I have confidence in their abilities.
Is there an ability, because what you're saying, I think what we're voting on though is to put that power in an individual, not necessarily a team. So I guess there's a construct where
I don't expect this individual to work in anything but a team. So it's,
right.
He's going to have to make the call, and that's part of the job. At this point. So it's, and that's a lot to take on, certainly.
I suggested with the big one of the staff.
Patrick. Sure, just ask, you said that you would defer to the local nurses, and I'm fairly certain that 5 of them wrote a lengthy, low document letter that they didn't feel now was the time. So if we're deferring the local control and the people that are on the front line making those decisions, working it day in and day out, and their recommendation is to not do this right now. That's just maybe I'm inferring too much by the letter that they wrote, but it seemed pretty clear that their recommendation from the 5 assigned school nurses was to not do it right now.
I guess I just need clarification on that, because it made me a little nervous when you said, okay, I think, or not necessarily you, but in general, it makes me a little nervous having the idea that we're gonna rely on our administrative or rely on our individual school teams, because I think our administrators have been under fire, and I feel like that's kind of like us just passing the buck. So can I just get some clarification on
So
that?
obviously, at any point, the board could retake that.
Right.
You know, assuming we did this that Marie made her motion and it passed, you know, the board is the superintendent's boss, right?
Yeah.
So at any point,
We are in that.
you know, we could like take the reins and say, we are passing a mask mandate or passing our any whatever we want, you know, I mean, not whatever, but like whatever COVID mandate that we wanted. But you know, my feeling is that we are at a point in the pandemic that it makes more sense to transfer the management of it out of this more clunky thing of like calling a special meeting if we want to do it or do
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
into an administrative procedure realm. So that is how that's was sort of how I envisioned that would be a bit more flexible and allow more responsiveness as things are evolving.
No, and I would just say, it does make me a little nervous to put Mrs. Stewart under the fire again, or even to,
Well, yeah,
you know.
we put really,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Kathy?
I'm still trying to understand what our options are going to be when it comes time to vote. I understand that we want to put, some of us want to put the control with the superintendent or with the AD or whatever.
Well, our options will really depend on the nature of our motion. Like, I'm the chair, so I don't make any motions, right? So, Marie has a motion she can make. I mean, any person can make a motion that they want to make, and the board can vote on it. So, whatever, what the decision to be made will depend upon the motion that is made.
Okay, so it's possible to have a motion that would delay unmasking, but still turn over, even if.
Right,
Mr.
yeah,
Torrey
yeah,
disagrees with
yeah.
it. I just want to understand what that is.
Yes. My concern about that kind of motion is about the requirement that the stress that places on teachers and administrators to, you know, I think to obtain compliance over our time period, which an end is in sight, but it hasn't occurred yet. I mean, it's not for me, it's for the board to decide. But I feel worried about that may be really challenging for the building staff.
Right, but I guess I'm not seeing a path forward that would be continue masking for a period of time, but also turnover. So, flip that switch that we're talking
Right,
about.
that could, yeah, I mean,
You would
Could
just do a
just don't-
two-part.
just don't think
it
it's
would be a
good idea.
two-part.
Yeah,
It would be
like
a
a twofer.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think we should let Marie make the motion. I think technically we should have had a motion on the floor at the outset.
Yeah.
And had it seconded, and then we discuss the motion. We amend the motion, we defeat the motion, we approve the motion. And then if you defeat it, you make another, somebody makes another motion, because that's the new one. So I think it's one less time for Marie to make, or someone to make a motion, and then you debate the merits of it and you act.
Right? I move the mask requirement in all AOS 91 member schools be repealed effective March 9th, 2022, become optional. Member schools can continue to supply masks, or will or shall, and other PPE to staff and students who wish to wear them for the remainder of the school year. I further move that the board authorize the superintendent to use mandatory masking as a mitigation strategy for a limited time across the AOS or for specific schools or spaces or activities in the future if deemed necessary, in consultation with public health experts and the CDC in order to keep schools open and to maintain student and staff safety.
any discussion? Right,
So I think the way that that's made at this point is it's going to release that mandate on the 9th.
right.
But
It's aligning.
we also have someone who's also been given the authority to reinstate a mandate And it could be done essentially at that same point, if the desire was to have that mask mandate continue for a period of time. Because it is a mitigation strategy that we're giving direct authority for him to use. So that would be one avenue of doing that, and I would expect that Mike would work with his team to understand what he wants to do and what is necessary and appropriate for the schools for where we are right now. If he doesn't take that action, then it just goes that we look at the mandate, and he does have the authority to reimpose that mandate at some point down the road.
Marie and then John.
No, it's fine.
Okay. I was just thinking too, and some of you were here, so when I'm pretty sure, and it's reflected in Robin Sue's statement as well, but when we came here that night to have the discussion and to hear the recommendation of the former superintendent, we did not have to vote that night. We were continuing to operate in the way that we continue to operate for many things, which is we have take a recommendation from the superintendent. The superintendent has brought forth a recommendation that has been based on lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of work and consultation and community building and legal work. I mean, so we do that all the time, and we did it that we came to that meeting, whatever that was, ready to, feels like a decade ago. We came to that meeting ready to just accept the recommendation. I don't think there was anything wrong on the table. And then we were, I think it was Robin Sue, she was the one that said, let's vote on this. So I'm just throwing that out there because I think, we all should have a healthy distrust of, things, and that's certainly quite in the day and age that we are in. But this is how we have operated for the past 3 years. We have taken recommendations that are very thoughtful and that are well put together and that are ethical and based on consultation with experts. And we move those forward in an administrative process many ways. We're faced here tonight with, we're faced here tonight with kind of removing that layer, which is the mandate part, and sort of reinstating how we have been working for a long time throughout this with many other mitigation strategies. So I understand and I can appreciate and I feel I get the idea that we need to continue to, we want metrics, we want this, we want that, but that's not the level sometimes that we have typically accepted superintendent's recommendations. We have accepted them and moved them forward without necessarily a vote or a mandate or strings attached or metrics or whatever all the time, and that has been the right decision to do it.
Carrie, and then
After,
Robert, sorry, Robert.
Okay, well, I just want to address what Marie just said, and my understanding of then what I've heard in the motion is that the second part of your motion is giving control to our superintendent and the team behind him to make the decision. But the first part of your motion is saying that we're going to go to we're going to drop the mask mandate and go to student to the choice.
Because we have
So-
to,
Yeah, we have to
we
repeal it.
made a motion because Robin Sue's motion in the fall, or whenever it was.
But that doesn't mean that we have to put a date on it, does it? We can say that we're gonna drop the school board mandate that masks are
Then
required,
it would be effective now.
but we're giving,
You could put whatever date
Yeah.
you want. You could change, you all can change the date through a motion. You feel you want to add time, you could add that. And then say that the mandate is lifted, it goes to mass optional on X date, and then the rest of the information. Or it can be as it was.
I just don't like it with what the CDC said.
Yeah.
okay. Just trying to understand. Right.
Going back to Patrick's point, which I thought was a very good one about, listening to the school nurses and the professionals that are in the buildings. Mike, I thought you brought up a lot of good points on how you could, some kind of key milestones or markers we could use to make that decision. And I know I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but if there's a building that needs a mask mandate separate from another building, is that something that you considered instituting, say, Connors Emerson, there's more of an outbreak, we're gonna institute the mask mandate on a building by building basis?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to say, I feel like it's a little bit like going on a road trip and you really have to use the bathroom and you get off the highway and the closer you get to the bathroom, you have to go so bad. And you get out of the car and go to the bathroom, there's a wicked long line. And it's really hard to sit in this chair and hear the such compelling opinions or experiences on both sides. And I don't want to operate on fear, I want to operate on what's really happening. But I am afraid. So I can say I have to admit that, but I think I'm going to be afraid whenever we make a change, because I'm now in a new comfort zone. I have worked throughout the pandemic with the public, with a mask on most of the time, but there were times during the pandemic when we took our masks off because it felt safe. We didn't have COVID in our area. I still wear a mask every day. The majority of my customers, I guess I feel like it's tipping in the last couple of weeks. It's been a lot fewer and fewer people are wearing masks. I don't know. It's a hard. I'm feeling really conflicted because of the little kids. I hear the things about speech and facial expression and hearing. And, those things are so real, and I know that. Some are. My friend's brother died. My own brother is subject to long COVID. There's that's real too. It's not a fake sickness. It's a really bad sickness for some people. So it's a tricky spot to be in. I just want you all to know I appreciate every one of your voices, and I heard them all. And but anyway, I just John?
I don't know if you call it plug for moving the date back, but I mean, we have neighboring districts that have gone optional. And if we did move the date 2 or 3 weeks, it would give us probably a very good idea of what we are going to be in for if we go optional. Just putting that out there.
If we would do that, some of the weeks and then Maria would put in the motion.
I just want to speak to that. The thing is that like it's for Harvard versus Southwest, and Ellsworth's community is in our communities where we interact. So I don't know if we could necessarily think of that. I don't know if we can necessarily judge by that. Because of our communities, our vastly spread out, and kind of close together, and some are spread out. So I don't think this COVID allows us that direct correlation. I think it's a really good idea. Like, oh, let's wait and see what that shoe drops in Ellsworth or in Hancock. But I didn't know how isolated are your communities. I know mine's not. It could have been, we're gonna know all the time from now with them. It's like we think we're insulated, we're not. So I don't know how well we can play non-community. That's enough. It would be great because if their numbers went through the roof, let's be right away. But it's really hard sitting all of us up here and everybody there to know. Is a week make a difference? Is 2 weeks? I could see it red and knowing I could not get patients into the hospital a week ago. 1 week ago, sent patients on and every hospital was full from here to Boston. Full. No place. They hadn't been in the hall.
Gail and then Jim. Gail and then Jim.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
We have a motion on the
Yes.
floor,
Is
yeah.
that motion seconded?
Yes.
And I believe we should address the motion.
We're in the discussion phase of the motion.
We talked it to death.
Well, so I call the motion, and so then I call for discussion, and we're doing discussion, so we're about to call it for a vote. Gail, and then we'll call it on the vote.
So obviously, there are no right answers here. And just for the record, I'm not voting for that, so that may be easy for me to say. But we have asked our superintendent to analyze this situation and oversee this administration and the management of this problem, which is massive. And he is making a recommendation to us. And because I don't think there's a clear right or wrong answer, my preference would be to defer to his reasoning and his reasoned suggestions that we've asked him to put effort into, and this is what he's coming to us with. And so I think you should consider supporting Louis' motion, which I think is in line with his with what he's recommending, knowing that we're never going to have a moment when it feels comfortable. It's just not going to exist. That having been said, I'm probably the last person here who will take their mask off. The life doesn't behave. So I get the problem. I do get the problem. But
So I think, I feel, similarly to what, Gail, you said, but I think we should call it for a vote.
Yep.
I'm not voting tonight, but I would support Marie's motion if I were.
You non-voters are so.
Jeez. So, all in favor?
And that is, all in favor would be to drop the mandate of the mask.
can we just reread the motion?
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
That's okay.
Mask requirements, I move the mask requirements in all AOS member schools be repealed effective March 9th, 2022, and become optional. Member schools will shall whatever, to continue to supply masks and other PPE to staff and students who wish to wear them for the remainder of the school year. And further move that the board authorize the superintendent to use mandatory masking as a mitigation strategy for a limited time across the AOS or for specific schools, spaces, or activities in the future if he deems necessary, in consultation with public health experts and the CDC, in order to keep schools open and to maintain student and staff safety.
All in favor? One. Someone help me count. Oh. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8.
Oh, she's. Keep your hands up, because I can't count. I'm right.
1. It's hard to see it. 9. Okay. All opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. You get 7. Right? Okay. So the motion passes 9-7. Thank you all for your thoughtful consideration. I know this is probably one of our hardest things that we've ever had. I would say we would have a second period of public comment here from people. So I'll now open it for a second period of public comment. If anyone has any public comment who hasn't already commented, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a grandmother. I So I understand the problem. with
It's a little hard to
masking.
hear you, so if you stand a little closer to the microphone, that'd be really better. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a grandmother. I have 3 grandchildren in this high school right now. I was born and raised on the island. And I want to thank, first of all school board members. I appreciate, I've done that in my past. I've done the board thing, the whole thing, and I know what a tough job it is. I think the most important thing for me was when I got voted onto a board and it was an election, I always took that responsibility really strongly that I was representing the members of my community. And so I know personally, a lot of people wrote in. There aren't as many here tonight as I thought there would be, but I appreciate you thinking about what they said in their letters, first of all. Secondly, I love what Marie said about we followed all these guidelines for so long, for 2 years. And as a grandparent, I respected that. Did I like it all the time? No, because I think it affected my grandchildren. But having said that, I respected it because we were following the science. And you guys voted following the science. So I am so pleased that this passed tonight, because to me, you would have been changing midstream if you had not passed this, because you have been voting to follow the science through the federal government and Maine right along. And I respect that. We were all trying to follow the science. But now it's time to follow the science and have some faith in the guy you put in superintendent's position. If it needs to back off because we protect our kids, that's what we're going to do. But I can't thank you enough for doing this tonight for our children. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. A little bit. Good evening, everybody. Just wanted to announce myself. My name is Tim Lunt. I am what's known as a boomerang. Grew up here, graduated from this building in 1990, and recently got a chance to come home. You all had to face a very, very big question. Science, what does your mind say? What does your heart say? And I just want to give you all a big standing ovation. Myself and everybody else here. Doing the right thing and voting your with what you thought was right. Yay or nay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other comments?
So it did get approved to take off. It was hard to hear back there.
Effective March 9th.
I put it back on.
Yeah, so you need to wear it until March 9th. So if you can put it back on tonight. It's still
I'm
effective.
leaving. It's what it will be like when people have their masks off.
Yeah.
And it will be fine.
Okay,
All right.
okay, so I'll take a motion to adjourn. Can I just make one comment first?
I just want to say I did vote no, but I will fully support, and I believe that all of us on the school board will fully support everything that all the Mike and the responsibility that we're giving to him in this. It wasn't a vote against Mike or his ability to make decisions. For me, it was a vote against just protecting our most vulnerable people.
Motion 8:05 to adjourn.
All in favor?